everybody. This presentation is why I started making video probably 30 years ago. In Trinidad, there were really no active modelers in the region. I belonged to no modeling club at the time. I didn't know what books to buy. And the YouTube instructional videos on model building were really terrible. And the only advice I could get were from the retail trade who sold model kits. And of course, a lot has changed since then. Today, I belong to 5 clubs. I've been on one international course on model building, visited lots of museums, and even published the odd paper or two. And perhaps most excitingly, I made a movie called Tobago 1677 on a battle in Tobago. And that may have been the reason I got hooked to start making these videos. As of July of this year, I've made 286 videos on ship modeling. So I've learned a lot of what you should do, but most importantly, I've learned what we should try and avoid. So I thought what I'd do is quickly go through what a professional would do if they were going to make a video like what I do. And the first thing you would do is spend a lot of time trying to understand exactly what you want to show the audience. And then you would write a complete script, which would include all the key points and all the correct, in our case, nautical words. Once that was done, you would create a storyboard either with drawings of what you shoot or photographs of each chapter and every scene. And then you'd start to look at where you were going to actually shoot the video itself. Once that was done, you'd start gathering equipment and you'd either buy, borrow, or rent. All right, so once you've written your script, you'd start to get equipment necessary to shoot the documentary, and you could rent, borrow, steal, or buy what you're going to use. And you'd need different cameras, different lenses. You might even need a video mixing board, which could mean you need another person to help you actually do the work. Then there's sound and lighting. You will need good microphones. Certainly, the key to any good photography are good lights. So you need umbrella reflectors, and then lots of different stands that are going to hold the cameras and the lights exactly where you want them to highlight the work that you're shooting. And then, so now that's all the hardware, and then the software. You need to get a large monitor, and most important, you need a hard drive, a large hard drive, to store all of the data that you're going to hold, so that when you go to edit, you have easy access to the data. And of course, this now ends up to a picture that looks like this. And this could be a cheap picture or an expensive picture. The difference between a cheap picture and an expensive picture is about 10 times the cheap picture. So now that you know what you're supposed to get, that's not what I do, and that's not how I do it. I'll just take you quickly through my journey. My sole objective was always to share my experience with struggling model builders like myself. As far as I know, I'm still the only ship modeler in Trinidad. So all of my early advice came from reading books and looking at the very poor amateurish videos that YouTube had in the late 90s. And I decided that I had to do better than that. I had never really made a movie of any kind, but I did work in marketing. So I had a rough idea of what was required. If you look at my early videos, they leave a lot to be desired. In also making my videos, I had to decide, was I going to do like most of us do, which is don't show the errors that we make so we don't look so stupid. I decided that I would show all my mistakes, and for that I apologize to no one. My videos are meant to be learning tools, and they're not really there to win friends or influence people. Over time, my photography skills and the equipment used improved, and today I'm pretty happy with the quality of the videos. but every month or two, I buy some additional gadget that will help make the presentations a little better. But I have to tell you, I did waste a lot of money on the journey. And so what I'm hoping to do is those of you who want to go on this journey, try and save you some of the money and the frustration. First of all, I don't prepare a script. I don't prepare a storyboard, but I do go back to the section of the book where whatever I'm working on the model to make sure I have all the nautical terms correct. Most important, and this really relates to me with Greg and David, I make sure that if I'm portraying what they're instructing the book, that I get it right. There are a few times when I've actually had to go and scrap a whole video because what Greg and David suggested in the book is not what I did. And they've never held me to task for it, but I've held myself for task. 90% of the cameras I use are an iPhone and an iPad. And I use iMovie for two reasons. One is it's free. And the second and perhaps more important, it's very easy to use. There's a very low learning curve. I record and edit as I go along, compared to shooting all the footage, storing it on a hard drive, and then coming back later. If I make a mistake, I correct it immediately. And if I'm uncertain how I'm going to build something, I tend to practice on the port or starboard side and then record the film on the opposite side of what I just did. That works well, except for the bow and the stern, as some of you have seen some of my recent videos. As soon as I record an action, I immediately edit. Why? Because once the action is filmed, you have to move on. You can't go back. And so in model building, there's no take 25 of scene one. Scene one is scene one, and whatever it is what it is. So we're recording the action as the model is being built. In addition, if you're recording lots of clips, which you then store on a hard drive with a plan to come back and edit it later, it really increases the time you spend in editing because you can never find the clip you're looking for. You don't know where you've stored it. In terms of the length of the videos, I don't go over 20 minutes. A few of them are as short as 10 minutes. And my original objective was to try and put out a video every 2 weeks. But that's getting harder and harder these days. In terms of the equipment, I have a cupboard with thousands of US dollars of useless camera equipment and accessories. So you can get trapped very easily by buying a lot of nonsense. The main camera is the iPad Pro, but more recently I've also been using my iPhone. And where you will spend good money is on all the various stands that hold either the iPad, the iPhone, or different light stands in particular. The iPad Pro that I use has 1 terabyte of hard drive. That's really an essential part of me making my videos easily. The newest iPad, which is a nice 14-inch iPad, has a 12-megapixel camera. And more importantly, it has 2 terabytes of storage. And why that's important is as the quality of what you shoot increases, the demands for storage increase exponentially. So again, when I upgrade, I'm even hoping that the next iPad that comes out will have a higher storage than 2 terabytes. And again, right now I'm recording everything on 4K at 60 frames a second, which is on both the iPhone and the iPad. Last year, I bought a new iPhone. I had an old Model 7 for a long time. I thought I'd upgrade. And that turned out to be an error because the new iPhone 15 Pro has a terabyte of storage on it, which is great. But more important, it has a 12-megapixel telephoto lens and a 5 optical zoom in. So it eliminates for macro photography, it eliminates a third camera. and really is a fantastic piece of equipment. Stands for us are very important, and I have literally a cupboard full of useless stands. This particular one I picked up a few years ago, and it's fantastic for model building because the legs can adjust to different heights, and I'll always find a place to put it when I'm actually doing the filming while working on a model at the same time. In terms of the iPad stand, I use a professional video stand. It's fairly expensive. Again, I have 4 or 5 cheap stands, and worse than that, the bracket to hold the iPad. In the early days, there were not a lot of brackets, and that cost me an iPad when it fell off and smashed the iPad to pieces. In terms of audio, I use the Rode Wireless Go 2, which has a little lavalier extension, and the external mic is a huge improvement in the sound quality. An iPad or an iPhone is designed to catch all of the sound in a room. So it's actually not a good standalone video camera to use because you get too much sound. Many of you have made comments about the frogs in my video, and that's when I'm on the iPad microphone. The lavalier is fantastic. And it actually comes with a second mic. So if you're doing interviews, again, it just improves the sound quality. Last year, I got this lovely little stand, which allows me to put the iPad and the iPhone at the same time to get different angles, and really has improved the quality of the video. This is a Makosa camera that I bought last year. I was semi-blind, which I've since fixed. But when I was making some scrapers, I literally couldn't see the scrapers. So I saw this on Amazon. By the time it was working, I'd spent about 200 US. It solved my problem for looking at very, very fine work to see what I'm doing. But it's an awful camera. And again, the new iPhone would easily surpass this, and that probably would have only cost me half the price. Lighting is the most important part of taking any photograph, and I found an inexpensive solution. There's that little LED light, I think costs 5 US in the hardware store, and it's hooked on to a microphone stand, and the microphone stand allows me to get the lights as close to when I want, and it has really improved the quality of the photographs. And then the last piece of equipment that I use quite often is an Apple Pencil. And a perfect description of its use would be, here's the book, the Swan Practicum. I would take a picture of the Canon stand, crop it out, and then on the far right, you can see that I have colored in the part that I want to highlight. And you couldn't do this properly without the Apple Pencil. So then that's all the hardware that you need to shoot anything. So let's move into editing. I use iMovie. There are lots of teaching videos on how to use iMovie, but it really has a very quick learning process. The key to know about editing is if you don't plan out your editing correctly, it's going to take a huge amount of time. In terms of cost, you can rent Adobe Premiere Pro, $20 a month, huge learning curve, or Final Cut, which is $5 a month, but again, very, very steep learning curve. But there are lots of options, and some of you may have expertise in these areas, and I would just follow what you know. One of the great things about shooting the video on the iPad is that the data, capturing the data and the editing is done and stored on the same piece of hardware. And that has a huge savings in time. I'll just take you through the editing. You simply go onto the app, click Make a New Movie, and it immediately takes you to your photo files where all of your clips are stored. You just click on them and you can zoom in, zoom out. This is the main screen, so it gives you access to your videos, your photos, if you keep stuff in albums, which I find very useful. And then the top photograph, that's the button you press, videos. And on the far right is your entire file with all of your photographs. The one I go to on the far right, top down, number 2, is recently added. Since I'm shooting and editing as I go along, what the last few clips that I shot are in recently added. You'd select the particular clip you're interested in, and it goes straight into automatically dumps into your movie. You can do the same thing with movies. And then once it's in the file and you're looking at the far right of an actual edit, you can speed up the clips, slow them down. At the yellow bar you see at the bottom with that red line around it, that allows you to zoom in or speed up. No, in this case, to speed up or slow down the video clip. Both the iPhone and iPad allow you to shoot in slow motion. And if you decided when you were editing it that you didn't want to do that, you can actually speed it up, use this bar, and get back to what you originally shot. Lots of descriptions. And once you add it into the clip, and very easy, you just touch it and clip would come up, and you can select the font and you can enlarge it. You can decide how long you want it to stay in the clip. But it's, again, an essential part of making a good video, that not only do you hear, but you see the key point that the video is trying to explain to you. Finally, recently in the last year, I've been adding background music. And there is a lot of copyright-free music on YouTube. All that is required is that in the written description, you put in a link of who you took the copyright-free music. Otherwise, you get a warning, and I've had quite a few of these. You can also, if you have audio on the track already and you want to take it out, you can just zero it out in iMovie and replace it and add over it. And recently, these days, because I got cited a few times for not crossing the T and dotting the I in the copyright description, I've started using a friend who's a wonderful musician and records music. And he's now allowing me to use his music, which is really great. Copyright is a major issue. So in my case, for instance, where I'm using copyrighted stuff from Greg and I always recognize the graphic content to make sure that there are no issues. This may seem simple, but you should ask the owner of the copyright for permission to use it. But there are times when I've waited 3-4 weeks waiting on a reply. And so if I ask you and you don't answer, I will use it, knowing that I could be asked to pull it down. Eventually, I normally get a reply, sure, it's no problem, but that might be 6 months down the line. So far, nobody's taken me to task, and I hope it remains that way. There are 2 challenges left with using video, and the biggest one is lip sync. There are some softwares that will improve the lip sync. I've given up trying to fix it. In fact, if you look on YouTube, you'll find that probably 90% of the videos have a slight problem with lip sync. It's just not worth my time to try and fix it. And the second one is unwanted sources of light. In my shop, for instance, which is a tight space, a 12 by 12 space, I can't shoot in the day, and that window comes and haunts me. So I've had to rearrange my entire shop to make sure that the light is behind the camera. In the night, it's not an issue for me. And then finally, I store the videos on YouTube. I pay for a service on Vimeo, which is $100 a year. And I do store the finished video on a hard drive, an internal hard drive. But I don't retain any of the clips. And there's a simple reason for that. You never go back to use them, and it will magnify your storage problem immensely. So I just throw them out, and if I have to refer back to something, I'll just reshoot it. So that's it. If you plan to record your build, you have to realize that it's going to double the time that you actually spend building your model. So that's a quick review. I hope you found it interesting, and I'm open to any questions you may have.